Hello and welcome to Coffee Break. My name is Angela, and today we're going to be talking about the Mylio Organization Blueprint. What we're going to do is cover a handful of tips and tricks and best practices for keeping your library under control. Whether you're just getting started or you feel like things are a bit of a mess and you've just been here for a while, everybody hopefully will get something out of this presentation. Before we jump in, I do want to let you know that every week we have a lot of different events going on for you. This week we had 2 Q&As and we had coffee break. Next week, I wanted to let you know we'll also have Q&As on Tuesday and Thursday. We'll have coffee break next Friday. I believe we also have a special webinar with Printique next Wednesday. So make sure you go to community.mylio.com/events or check out that QR code on the screen. And you can see all of our latest events that we have going on and join in whenever you're able. Coffee breaks are always recorded as our webinars, so if you can't make those, totally understand. Those will be posted in the community for you once we have a chance to get those edited. All right. Also, if you have questions during today's presentations, we will have time for Q&A at the end. So you can use the raise hand icon that's at the bottom of your screen that lets me know that you'd like to unmute and ask a question. You might find that raise hand icon under the More menu. It's a 3-dot button, or under the reactions. You may also use chat. You can go ahead and put any questions you have in the chat. Lori is with us today. She's going to be answering any questions as they come up, and we'll certainly take questions at the end as well. So let's go ahead and jump into today's presentation, which is From Chaos to Calm, the Mylio Organization Blueprint. What I want to cover today is the difference between folders and albums, how you can safely move files around inside of Mylio Photos. We'll go over a short overview of Mylio's cleanup tools, and I'll show you a simple workflow for keeping things organized. It's a lot to cover, but we're going to kind of keep it high level and conceptual, and I'm going to have Lori share some additional resources in the chat if you want to dig deeper into any of these topics, because we've done coffee breaks on each one of these over the last couple of years, and we have recordings. So if you want to dig deeper on any of these, those are going to be a great place to go. So the thing we have with everybody who comes to Mylio is, I got everything in here, now what do I do? And it's something that we hear really often, especially Lori. She handles our onboarding program. So if you're brand new, you've probably talked to Lori or somebody on her team. And she does a really great job of helping everybody get their stuff into Mylio. But once you do that, what's next? You probably have photos from a lot of different sources. You have different folder structures. So maybe you were a little bit organized at this point, not so organized over here, and then you tried to get organized again. So stuff might be a bit of a jumble. You probably have duplicates, especially if you tried to do backups over the years. Maybe you had things on different drives, and some of those are the same on every drive, and maybe some of the stuff is different. You bring it all into Mylio. You probably have or have had over the years different cameras, different phones, and many of us have years or decades of images. Everybody starts at this point. You bring everything in and then sit there and go, now what? So what our goal is with today's program is not perfect organization. I think that is an ideal that we have in our minds, but it honestly just doesn't exist because we are constantly making new photos. People send us new images. We're discovering new boxes of pictures in the back of the cupboard. There's always stuff changing and coming into our libraries. So the goal is not perfect organization. That's kind of a pipe dream that I don't think any of us are ever going to attain. But what we can do is we can reduce clutter. We can create structure that makes sense, and we can make your photos easier to find. And at the end of the day, that is my happy place. I want to be able to find what I want when I want it without a lot of stress. And I don't want a super cluttered library, and I want a structure that makes sense to me. So the structure that I'm going to suggest today is date-based, but not everybody has to follow that same structure. So if what I suggest doesn't work for you, feel free to create your own, but create a structure that works. So we're going to start first with cleaning things up, because when you get photos from a lot of different sources, you're going to have duplicates. You're probably going to have burst modes of similar images when you hold down that shutter button and you get a whole series of images that are all virtually the same. Multiple versions of the same photo. This often happens when you take a photo and then you edit the photo, and maybe you edit again, or you edit it in another program, and you have all these different versions of the same image. And you probably have old imports from previous systems. So again, a lot of us that are into photo organization, even if you failed at it before, you probably have different sets of information where you've tried to get organized over the years. So before you get into deep reorganization and moving around files, what I suggest is reducing the noise. So in Mylio Photos, we have a lot of different tools that help you surface problem areas. Things like photo dedupe, photo declutter for finding similar photos, quick review for images that need review, quick collections that surface some of these things that need attention. Let these tools surface your problem areas. So let's kind of go through these one by one. We have photo dedupe, which finds exact duplicates in your library. We have photo declutter, which is great for finding similar photos and specifically images that are burst mode. So if you're holding down that shutter button, it's going to take a time frame and group anything within that time frame into a group so you can review them together. We have tools like quick review that help you go through, say, a folder or a group of images and add stars and flags so you can decide what you want to work with more. And then hidden under the quick collections menu, there's a handful of cleanup quick collections that are really very helpful, again, in surfacing some of those problem areas and helping reveal where this chaos is hiding. So let's go through these one by one. I'm going to jump over to Mylio and show you where you can find these tools. And again, this is going to be kind of high level. Lori is sharing in the chat some links to some coffee breaks on these topics that you can go more in depth. So I do encourage you to go check out those links and watch those videos because you're going to get a deeper understanding of how each tool works. But like I said, photo dedupe is to find exact duplicates. So what that means is it's going to be pictures that are this, and it's going to be just pictures. So photo dedupe, it's indicated in the name, only works on photos. It doesn't work on videos. It doesn't work on document files. It is photo only. And it finds exact duplicates. So it has to be the same file type. So 2 JPEGs or 2 TIFFs, things like that. It's not going to recognize a TIFF version and a JPEG version as a duplicate. They have to be the same resolution. They have to be the same file size. They don't have to have the same metadata and they don't have to have the same file name. But all of those other things, it has to be an exact duplicate photo. So what you're going to do is go over here to the Tools menu, and that's over here in the left sidebar. It's a little wrench and hammer crossed, and you're going to choose Photo Dedupe. And what that's going to do is it's going to go through your library and find sets of images that are exactly the same. So for example, I've got a couple of images here of my bicycle. It looks like one came in from my iPhone, one came in from my MacBook Pro. I don't need both of those, so I can go ahead and just say, let's get rid of that one. And one of the cool things that happens here is when you use the photo dedupe tool, if you're getting rid of some images, Mylio will take any metadata that is in one image and it will move it into the one that you're keeping. So for example, in this image here, one says it has conflicting metadata and it has an XMP file. The other one does not have an XMP file. So if I want to go ahead and say this one here that's called copy, that's the one to get rid of, I can go ahead and do that. And then that metadata that is from the one that I'm getting rid of will be put into the one that I'm keeping. Excuse me. So you can go down the line and do these one by one. Now, if you have a ton of duplicates in your library, that can feel a little bit overwhelming. So there's a couple of things I do want to point out here that are going to make your life easier. The first one is you don't have to do everything all at once. And I actually highly recommend that you don't. So you can go over here to any of the quick filters on the left and you can narrow down what you're looking at. And I think personally the easiest way to do this is by folder. And so let's say I only want to dedupe my Apple Photos folder. Before we do that, you can see I have 605 sets, 1,800 files. If I go ahead and click on this, that brings it down to 174 sets and 454 files. So that narrows it down and gives me a much more manageable batch to work with. Do these in smaller batches because it's a little bit easier to wrap your head around than trying to do thousands at once. When I do that, you get a little option up here that wasn't present before. So whenever you're narrowing down what you're looking at in dedupe, you're going to have this option with scan scope. And basically what that means is you've selected a folder here. What do you want Mylio to compare that to? By default, it's going to compare that folder to everything in your library. So it's going to compare it to things that are not necessarily in that folder. So you can find duplicates anywhere in your library, but you're only looking at pictures that are in this one folder. If you know that the duplicates are only going to be in this folder, so you don't want it to look at your entire library, you just want it to look at this folder, you can also say within results. So those are your two options there. I typically keep it an entire library because if I'm looking for dupes, I want them to find the duplicates everywhere, not just in one folder. The other time saver here is going to be auto mark down here in the bottom right. And what this does is it goes through your images and it helps find the images that Mylio thinks are the best candidate to get rid of. So I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of that little one right there. And you can see that there are markings here. So you can say, I want to prioritize getting rid of images that already have a reject flag. I want to get rid of things that are not edited. I want to get rid of things that don't have an XMP. And then you can go ahead and choose if that's a yes or a no. And you can drag and drop these into the order that is most important for you. For me, I feel like the defaults work really well. So I typically come in here, I click restore defaults, and then I go ahead and say run auto mark. And that goes through my list of images and it picks the images that are good candidates to get rid of. When you're ready, down here in the bottom left, you have two options. You can delete them or you can move them. Delete is permanent. What that does is it's going to move them to your system trash, and that is where they're going to be. So you then go in and empty your trash. Those are permanently deleted, and it deletes them from every device in your Mylio library. So if you've got a couple of vaults and other devices connected to your Mylio account, Mylio is going to grab those pictures and it's going to delete them everywhere. If you're a little gun shy and maybe this is your first time using the tool and you just want to see how it works, you can go ahead and choose move marked. And what that's going to do is that's going to move them to a folder that's outside of your Mylio Photos library. So you have the option at that point. You can always re-import them if you choose to. So that's a lower risk option. If you were just getting started, you might want to try a small batch with move. Make sure things are working the way you expect before you move on to using the delete. Delete is, like I said, it's permanent and it will go to your system trash. Now you can grab them out of the system trash at that point and re-import them, but that's a little bit heavier option. So it is completely up to you. I totally understand the caution and maybe fear that some people feel in using a tool like this. It took me a while to trust it too. So as I've gotten used to this and I've learned to trust Mylio, Mylio is very good at confirming which images should be kept and not. And it doesn't actually follow through on the delete unless it actually confirms it is an exact duplicate. So when you click this delete, it runs another set of checks. And only if it passes that does it actually delete. So if it doesn't, you'll get a notification saying, hey, dedupe wasn't able to delete these. And it's usually because there was something found in that additional check that those images weren't actually duplicates. So there's a lot of safeguards in place. I've learned to trust it, but it did take time. So if you're a little concerned, go ahead and use that move option. But later on, you can go ahead and move to delete. And again, the goal here is to get rid of chaos. If you're just moving the chaos to another folder, that's a can you're kicking down the road you're gonna have to deal with eventually. So something to keep in mind there. The next tool I wanted to point out is declutter. And declutter is for your burst images. So if I go here to my tools in the left sidebar and I go here to photo declutter, you'll see that the UI is actually pretty similar. But what it's doing, instead of looking at exact duplicates, it's grouping together similar images. So if I go ahead and scroll down through this list, you can see these images are, some of them are the same, some of them are similar, some of them are different timestamps, like this one here. Let's take a look at this batch here. I was out on the bay on a boat and two images taken very close to each other. They're not exactly the same, but they are very similar. So it lets me go through and make an evaluation of which one I should keep. Now there's no right answer or no wrong answer here. It might be that you like both of these images and they're just different enough that you want to keep both. But sometimes when you've got 20 images of your kid kicking the same soccer ball as they're running down the field, there might be some where his feet are off the ground and there's a big smile and you can see that sense of determination, and that's an amazing picture. And the next picture could be a really awkward expression, feet are on the ground. It might just not be the great picture. So go through those images, and the ones that are awkward or not as good as the others, you can go ahead and get rid of those. That's clutter in your library that nobody necessarily needs or wants to deal with. So get rid of some of that, and that's going to make things feel a lot better. So again, like with dedupe, there is an auto mark session here. So you can use that to automatically mark things that are blurry, eyes closed, and so forth. This uses our AI smart tags. So that's pretty cool. You can go ahead and use that. And there's also, again, our filters on the left so you can narrow it down to a smaller set of images. And then once you've marked something to get rid of, you have that delete and that move option. So that's photo declutter. Next one we wanted to talk about was quick review. And this is a really nice mode for taking some of the extraneous things off the screen and being able to focus on just one group of images. So for example, if I want to focus on just the stuff from my phone, maybe what I'm going to do is click on this image. I'm going to go to show in folder. So I'm only seeing things in this folder now, and then I can go to either the more menu or over here into tools and choose quick review. And that puts me into this minimalist mode where I can focus on one image at a time. It'll automatically advance to the next image as I rate things. So I look at this image, I really like that. I'm gonna hit P on the keyboard for pick. And that you see here, that added a little pick flag. Little selfie, I don't know, it's okay. I'm just gonna go ahead and hit the arrow key, go to the next one. And so again, you can just move through these really fast and it auto advances picture to picture, and you can go ahead and rate and tag things. And this is one of those simple metadata steps that later on makes things easier to find, because the things that are the most important to you that you've added a pick flag or a 4-star or 5-star, those are the things that you're probably going to want to revisit later. And you can later on filter in your library to find those things very, very quickly and easily. Once you're done with quick review, you can either hit this little X right here or just hit the escape key on your keyboard and you go back into regular Mylio. The last thing I wanted to show you here was the cleanup quick collections. And this is one of those underused and often forgotten tools in Mylio that I think is actually very, very powerful. If I go ahead and go back here to the grid view in all photos, I'm going to open up the left panel here, and under quick filters, which is this little icon, or quick collections, I'm going to go into quick collections, and there are a lot of built-in groupings here that are great for cleaning things up. So for example, we can say, here's one that says need to organize. What this does is it pulls up all my pictures from the last 90 days that do not have a star rating yet and do not have a flag. So these are things that I might want to go ahead and use that quick review on. So I can say from here, let's go ahead and launch quick review. And now I can go through these images from the last 90 days and work through them. So it's an excellent way to surface those images that you need to give a little bit of attention to. I'm going to go ahead and escape out of there. Another one that you might want to take a look at here is review for cleanup. And what this does is this flag -1, that means you've given it a reject flag. So anything that has a reject flag or you've rated it with a 1 or 2 star, those are things that you might want to consider deleting. So this pulls them all into one place. You can go through and click through them and see, okay, are these actually junk? Do I really want to get rid of them? And if so, you can either just do a Command or Control A to select all and click delete. Or if maybe you just want to focus on the ones that you've marked as rejects, from here you can go to photo, or is it under organize here, and say delete rejected. And again, that's going to clean those up out of your library so you don't have to worry about them, and it just keeps things tidy. I recommend going into these cleanup quick collections on a regular basis. So for most people, that would be maybe once a month. Go in there, clicking through these, and do some basic cleanup. Make it part of your habit, whether it's once a month, once a quarter, once a week, whatever you have time for. Even put it into your schedule or calendar and set aside 15 minutes every so often to go through and do these things. And it's going to make things better and easier for you as you move forward. All right, so those are our cleanup tools. And again, that just reveals where the chaos is hiding and helps you clean that up. Once you've done that, that's when you can start to get down to the nuts and bolts of organization. And the two things that you're going to need to understand with Mylio is folders versus albums. Folders are where your pictures actually live. Any folders you see in Mylio Photos are actual folders that live on your computer, your external drives, and so forth. Those are their physical locations. So when I go here into Mylio and I go down to my folders view, just jump up a level here. These folders here, these are actual folders that live on all of my connected devices. So those are tangible and those are storage. So folders equal storage. Now, excuse me again. Albums, on the other hand, I feel are for storytelling. And The reason they're for storytelling is they are virtual collections. You can take one picture and put it into as many different albums as you want, and it doesn't create duplicates. So you have very, very flexible organization. It's great for trips, family events, projects, and so many other things. Whereas with folders, it's best kept simple, and I strongly recommend a date-based system. Now, you talk to 5 different photographers, it's very highly likely they're going to have 5 different ways that they recommend that you do this. For me, I like to have a year, and then inside of each year, I have a date for that a folder for each particular day. Let me show you what that looks like for me. You could do a year and a month. You could do just the year. Keep it as simple and as structured as makes sense to you. Now, there's also people out there who do like to have folders for different trips and folders for different events. That's okay. The only reason I kind of caution against that for most people is you're going to come across pictures that you go, okay, I have a folder for this side of the family and I have a folder for vacations. This was a family vacation. What folder does it go into? And that's where I feel like the date-based system really shines, is because then you can use tools like albums to put things into whatever album you want, but keep your existing organization date-based. Just makes more sense to me. So my main organization here is under my photos folder. You might have a Mylio Pictures. You might have it called something else. I'm going to go ahead and click into this, and you'll see I have different decades. And then as I scroll down to the current decade, I just have them in here, 21, 22, 23. If I go ahead and click into one of those folders, I then have folders for specific dates. And I put a little title into that, so that way at a glance, I can see exactly where I was and what I was doing. Right around this time last year, I was at WPPI in Las Vegas, and 2 years ago. So it's just a great way to get at a glance where your stuff is. So just to go back to the slide, folders are storage. It's where your stuff actually lives. Albums are for storytelling. It's where you purposefully group things for certain reasons. So your trips, those projects that you're working on, home renovations, you put all your befores and afters in there, things like that. So in a general sense, that is how I use folders versus albums. Don't overthink your folders. As I said, a simple date-based system works best for most people, but if you have a system that works for you, don't feel like you need to change it because that's the way I do it. If it works, don't fix it. But if you have a bunch of different folders that don't make sense, working on a date-based system, at least year by year, and then underneath those years, you can put different things. You can say, 2026 vacation. You can say 2026 family reunion. Whatever you want underneath that. It doesn't have to be quite so granular as I do. Do what works for you. And then don't overthink it. Like I said, let metadata, search, and albums do the heavy lifting. There are other tools for that granular stuff. Folders shouldn't be super granular because that can get really confusing. What folder does it go into? Does it go into the one for family? Does it go into the one for vacation? So that's where simple is better. Simple is also easier to maintain. Excuse me. All right, so let's talk a little bit about moving files safely in Mylio Photos. This is something that a lot of people kind of get tripped up on, especially if they're new to Mylio Photos, is how do I move things around? Oftentimes people make the mistake of going into their file system, start moving, dragging folders around, dragging files from folder to folder, and not realizing that they might have left behind some XMP files, which means that the metadata got disassociated with the pictures. Or syncing gets broken and stuff isn't syncing to different devices. Or Mylio pops up and says, hey, I don't know where this folder is, and you have broken links. This is why we recommend for most people to move files from inside of Mylio Photos. It will initiate the change in your file system for you. So when you do it in Mylio, you are indeed moving things in your file system, but it lets Mylio control that, and that way Mylio knows where stuff is going and where it was, and all of those things are preserved. So if you do decide to do things in the file system, there are a few things you can do, but I highly recommend for most people, if you need to reorganize or you want to reorganize, do it from within Mylio Photos. So the way to do that, if you have a set of pictures, I'm going to go ahead and go back up to the top level here in my folder view. Come on. There we go. And I've got a bunch of stuff in the Mylio inbox. So maybe these are pictures that I want to reorganize and put in different places. So I have images here. This is from my Outlander tour that I went on. So I'm going to grab these images. I want to move these into a separate folder. So I can go to I can right click on this and I can say move to folder. And from here, I can either find another folder or I can go ahead and create one. Now, before I do this, actually, I'm going to open up my info panel. This is going to tell me when this was. So if I have these selected, I can see these were October 26, 2025. And again, if I right click on this and then I say move to folder, I can go 2025 and 10. And I don't have a folder for the 26th. So what I can do, go ahead and click out of that search. I can then go to my main organization, which is photos. And I can go down to 2025. And inside of 2025, I want to put a new folder. And I'm going to call that 2025, 10, 26, Outlander. And I'm going to go ahead and say create. I have a folder now for that I can select. And now I just physically move those pictures in Mylio and on my hard drive from the Mylio inbox to that other folder. So if you have things scattered, you can go ahead and select a bunch of images, use that move to folder command. And again, open up your info panel so you can see the dates of what you have selected. That's going to make it a lot easier to pick out and choose what folders those should go into. So here's another one from October that I went to La Jolla. I can say, okay, that one needs to go into that folder. Right click on that, move to folder. Again, I'm going to search and see if that folder already exists. So 2025, 1004. It does not. I do have other years, but I don't have that one there. So I'm going to go ahead and again, go down to my photos, go down to 2025 and new folder. So 2025, 1004 and La Jolla and create. And that is how I'm going to create my folder. So I'm going to select, and that is going to move that and reorganize it to where it needs to go in my library. That's how I do it. So if you have things scattered, you can select more than one thing at a time. You can select a bunch if they're all related and you want them to all go to the same folder. Select them all. Do a bunch at a time. You don't have to go one by one. And this is a great way to start getting that system set up for yourself and a structure that makes sense. All right. Finally, you don't need to tag everything. Focus your images or focus your effort on the images that matter the very most. So when you've gone through and you've done quick review or you've added flags and stars to things, use Mylio's tools to find those best images. So for example, in Mylio, I'm going to go here to my all photos. If I want to start working on metadata, what I'm going to do is go by rating, label, and flag, and let's find my 4 and 5 star images. These are the ones that I want to make sure I've given the attention to. I want to make sure that faces are tagged. I want to make sure that these have at least some broad keywords to give me an idea, things that I might search when I'm looking for this. So for example, these 3 images here, I want to go ahead and be able to search these, not just by Milt Falls, by Scotland, by Kilt Rock. Maybe I also just want to search this simply by waterfall. And I can go ahead and add that keyword, and I've now added that keyword to those 3 images. If one of them is particularly special, I can put in a title. I can tell a story here with the caption. And there's a lot of information that I can add here that later on makes these easier to find. Don't do this with everything. Only do this with the best. The things that are the most important to you, those most precious memories, the ones that you've gone through and marked as favorites, those are the ones that you're going to spend the time adding the extra metadata on. AI can help with some of this, but AI and smart tags and that kind of search doesn't necessarily replace the way that you think. So what an image, something like an AI can find in your images is not necessarily the same words that you're going to use to search for it. So if there's something specific that you can think of that matters to you, that you know that you're going to search on this later, add that to the metadata. But again, only do this for the stuff that matters the most. Otherwise, you're going to spend a ton of time and you're going to get very, very little payback for it. So focus on your favorites, those family history things, your portfolio images, so your best work, and anything else you know you're going to want to find later. One that I made sure to add a keyword to, it's not like it's a great image, it's not like it's fun, it's one of the license plate of my car. And so I put in a couple of keywords that said license plate. and parking and things like that. Because when I go to a parking kiosk, I want to be able to find that picture very, very quickly and easily. So once I've walked across the parking garage, like, oh shoot, I don't remember what the license plate is on my car. Let me pull that up really quick. So that's one of those examples. Things that you want to remember and get to easily later. That's a great way. Another thing that I do that I take pictures of is ideas for holiday presents, for Christmas presents. If I'm walking through the store and I see something that makes me think of somebody, I take a picture of it. And if I go in there and add a keyword and just say Christmas, when I go in and search Christmas, that's going to pop up and be like, oh good, there's all of my ideas. And it just makes your life a little bit easier. So adding metadata to the photos you know you want to find later is going to go a long way in making your life easier. All right, so to kind of sum this up into what I'm calling the Mylio organization blueprint. First things first is you're going to import everything into Mylio. Everything from all of those sources, all of your phones, your cameras, your hard drives, your memory cards, different cloud services that you've used to store photos, download those, get those all into Mylio Photos. At first, it's going to feel very overwhelming. That is totally normal and expected. You're going to use those cleanup tools to reduce some of that clutter. Run dedupe, run declutter, and start regularly using some of those cleanup quick collections to make things simpler. As you start getting ready to move things around, think about a simple folder structure that you want to use. I recommend dates, but that doesn't necessarily work for everybody, and they don't have to be super granular. You can just do by year if you want. You can do by decade if you want. Keep it simple. It's just going to give you structure so you can find things later. For those meaningful memories that you want to group together, that's where albums really shine. So for trips, for family milestones, for projects you're working on, albums are amazing for a very wide variety of things. And then finally, as you're going through and you're adding flags and stars to things and you're doing that quick review process, add metadata to those images that matter the most, the things that you know you're going to want to find later. And that's where you're going to get the biggest payoff, because those images that are the most important to you, they're the ones that in that moment when you're out and about with friends, you pull out your phone, you want to share something. That information is what's going to make that image easy to find. So take a little bit of time to add those important details, some keywords, captions, titles to those best images. Not to everything, don't waste your time on that, but just to those absolute best images. So just to kind of reiterate, organizing is not something that you finish. It's small, consistent habits. So I know that a lot of us, we get into the project of organizing our photo libraries, and there's an end goal we have in sight. We have this beautiful picture of this beautiful organized library that's perfect. And the thing is we're always adding to it. We're always making new memories. We're always taking new pictures. It isn't something that's ever finished. Organization is a journey, not a destination. So hopefully this gives you some tools to manage that and keep it consistent over time and keep it manageable. Got a busy week for you guys. Next week we will have live Q&A on Tuesday and Thursday. You can go to community.mylio.com/events to see all of our upcoming events. I believe next week we also have a special webinar with Printique. We're going to be talking specifically about wall art and how to create a gallery wall using their gallery wall tool. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll have Libby from Printique there. We're going to have some giveaways. It's going to be great. So that, I believe, is on Wednesday at 11 Pacific. And then Friday next week, we'll have our coffee break. And it looks like, cool. Lori just put the topics in there, and it's getting unstuck. So we're going to have some great stuff for you coming up next week. I hope you'll be able to join us. Thank you to Lori for sharing all of the resources in the chat. If you haven't had a chance yet, go ahead and grab the links there if you want to dive deeper into any of the topics we talked about today. I know we covered a lot of stuff and we did it at kind of high level, but hopefully it gives you some direction on where to go with your organization.